When Obama was elected, very smart people were saying, we just saw the last Republican president. Because of the demographics, because everyone was young, they theoretically only vote Democratic.
A somber mood at Harris's watch party overnight after Donald Trump dominated the so-called blue wall of Midwest states that Democrats had counted on.
I look at the original sin as the incorrect analysis of why Obama won in 2012. Obama didn't win on identity. All they did was advertise about all the ways Mitt Romney outsourced jobs to China. They made a class argument. The Democrats got trapped for a decade into believing identity politics was the answer to sustained success. But how badly did the Democratic Party not want Hillary Clinton as their nominee? This gadfly, who nobody had ever heard of in national politics, suddenly becomes a co-equal favorite. And who would have run if Hillary doesn't run in 16? Michael Bennet runs, Amy Klobuchar runs, Cory Booker, and you have the generational turnover. And I look at it as, God damn it, my generation would have had a shot at the presidency, Gen X, and we're done.
All right, you ready, buddy?
Let's do it, man.
Chuck Todd.
From weekly to daily, welcome to our first show on a busy day in national and international politics. Live from Boulder, Colorado. Here in Manchester, New Hampshire. We are here in the debate spin room in New York City, our election headquarters.
One of the most recognizable faces and political analysts, a personal and quiet hero of mine. We look forward to the new Sunday Night with Chuck Todd, which I have gone deep down the rabbit hole. Want to get into it. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Well, you've done your share of pioneering in this independent media space. And, you know, it's funny, when you first started, I'd have been a defender of corporate-owned media. I would have told you all the resources I got, all the upsides that came with it. And wow, it's amazing how I sound like Bernie Sanders in my rants these days of corporate ownership of the press, because, you know, the benefits outweighed the downside until it did.
Yeah. Listen, fantastic beginning. I haven't finished with my fluffing you up here. So attended George Washington University Political Science, professor at Johns Hopkins, multiple Emmy wins. Gotta love that. Former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, very famous for that. Longest running show in American television history since 1947.
World television history, by the way.
World.
Yeah,
Kudos.
It is the longest continuously running television show.
Kudos.
My joke used to be, you don't want to be the last moderator.
No, I was about to
the
say,
longest running show
hard
in
to
the
do,
world. Yeah.
hard to do, and you got out at the right time. You don't want to
Correct.
be the guy that it goes down on his watch. NBC News political director, chief White House correspondent for NBC News. I could go on and on forever, but I want to get into actually the Chuck Toddcast. So you have been in podcasting for a bit, but the big one I want to talk about is Sunday Night with Chuck Todd, and we talked about it a little bit. But the changing of legacy media, of which you were one of the rare voices of sanity, and now the move to new media, media 2.0, news 2.0, whatever you want to call it. I want to get into it. I want to chop it up. I'm going to start with this because the first one, I watched them and fantastic. I like the idea. Podcasts tend to be a little bit boring. When I did Vice News, I was like, we're competing against video games. So I'd always like to have action and stuff. I hated talking heads. And now, for my sins, all I do is talking heads. But you're going to the restaurants, the favorite places, the favorite haunts, right. Which is a great thing. You've got some visual that makes people feel relaxed. Love it. Now, the first one was Steve Bannon.
FAFO.
Yeah.
Right? You f*** around, you're going to find out. I don't think President Trump's prepared to tolerate any nonsense.
Ballsy choice. And a great conversation. Now, I'm going to give you a little anecdote, but I wanted to give you a chance of saying why mainstream media, why leave the longest running TV show in the world, why come over to podcasting, why now 2025?
So I would say this, and this is, it informs my thinking of how we have created this Sunday night show, which is, I just think, I'm a huge baseball fan. And a guy named Bill James helped everybody figure out that there was a statistical perfection you could achieve in baseball, right? And as one franchise figured it out, everybody figured it out. And so we hit a period of time in baseball somewhere, about 2015, 2016, where everybody had the same information. Everybody had the same data. Everybody understood. And the game was quite boring.
The Oakland A's?
Yeah, the money ball. And there were three true outcomes, a strikeout, a home run, a walk, whatever. And that's how I feel about the Sunday show television space and sort of the legacy media in general, the 5 to 12 minute interview. Okay. Sometimes they go as long as 10 or 12. And that's if you're lucky to convince the powers that be to give you that much time. And you realize that everybody had figured out the format. The interviewee, the interviewer, you realize, and trying to push back at this, I want one guest for 30 minutes. First of all, it was hard to get guests to agree to it. And it was hard to convince the bosses to agree to it. The irony is, of course, this is what the 90s were about in Sunday television. They were all long. Dick Cheney for the full hour, Al Gore for the full hour. And that wasn't a odd thing. And it allowed you to have complete sentences and all this stuff. So I would say that I feel like as if, that the format and certainly the relationship between a Sunday show and the access that you need to certain guests just had really it made it harder to innovate, right? It made it harder to sort of push the envelope. It made it harder to feel like you were getting to know these folks and people would come on more prepared to answer questions in a way that went viral or to prevent virility rather than to just simply answer the question and tell us what you think and why you think it. So I would say that was, the first 5 years of Meet the Press, I loved it. The last 4 years were this constant battle where you knew this wasn't working, but to turn an aircraft carrier was really difficult. And ultimately, when you're at a legacy media company like NBC, it's an aircraft carrier. Yeah. And to make it turn is hard. So, if there were two truisms that I believe with Sunday night, one is it always has to be in person because it's just a different conversation. And two, it always has to be at least 30 minutes. I don't want a short interview with the main guest. I think it's the only, the podcast, that's why I love the podcast format. I feel like it's just harder, even if you want to bullshit somebody, excuse my language, you tell me whether you don't want me to curse and I won't.
You do what you want, baby.
You could BS for 10 minutes and get away with it. It's harder to keep it up for 30.
Yeah, you can keep on a sort of wonkish policy point for 5 to 10 minutes, and then say thank you for your time. I'm out. When when you hit minute 30, it's like, so your dad really beat the out. You really start to get into, the tears, which we're gonna get to. So anyway, your first episode, Steve Bannon, by the way, controversial character, was a riveting podcast. And you know what it reminded me of, and I think it just explained that you made the right move for what you just said. I think that show explained why right there, because it's longer. Right. The guy's controversial.
I could not have put that on Sunday. I could not have put that on Meet the Press.
Yeah.
First of all, his posture would have been different.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There's a formality to the show, and everybody sits up straight, right? And got to write this and all this stuff. And, there's nothing that used to give me more joy and disappointment at the same time when I'd have a younger round. I'm so excited about it. I'm so nervous. And I'm like, it's no different. It's all the same. So there was a part of me that was proud to be doing something that it meant something to other people. But on the other hand, you're like, boy, we're just trying to find out what the hell's going on. I don't want your own emotions getting in the way of that. So, but I couldn't have put it on because the network would have, I don't know if we want to have to defend everything Bannon does, and we're going to get criticism for why are you platforming Steve Bannon? And I'm always sitting there going, the voters are platforming these people, man. We've got to figure out why.
Well, that's a great answer, because this is my problem. And when I started doing this podcast, the idea was social media is sort of making policy, especially with Trump, and no one's really looking at it. And there's, people are taking this as truisms or truths, and no one's saying, hey, what's on this side and what's on that side? So I said, well, I'm just going to talk to everybody on every side and have questions. And you start doing that, and people are like, oh, Shane's been red-pilled, Shane's been Rogan, Shane's moved. And you're like, I'm just asking questions to people from both sides. And I remember talking to Speaker Boehner, and he was like, yeah, I got kicked out for talking to Obama, for even going to talk to him.
Yeah.
You're like, that's your job. But it's gotten to the point where you can't talk to either side. But anyway, I wanted to get to this, which is, it was, again, great combo. I think it was great for him. It humanized him. He comes across as a smart guy who's playing a very...
And that's what I got criticized for, by the way. You know, how dare you make him a human being? I'm like, I think he's a human. I think he did that before I did.
He's also a very smart political player. Yeah. And that's what comes across. And this is what I wanted to get to is, I went to some event once. I can't remember what it was, but it was essentially the same thing. It was Karl Rove, the Steve Bannon before Steve Bannon, Karl Rove, with Rahm Emanuel, who was another one of your guests, which was another great podcast. So you did both sides. So F you to all the people who are saying about, so you're just talking to everybody, which I love. And they went on. I remember Karl Rove said a few things. He said, I wasn't political in college. I had to pick a team, and Republicans stay on message and they defend their guys. So I went Republican and ended up becoming the sort of voice of the party. Rahm Emanuel, and they were talking about like the game, the great game, the game. And both of them, to me, in both of your podcasts, which is why it was so fascinating, again, kudos, is it came across that to these guys, it's a zero-sum game, but it's a game.
Yeah. No, how do you feel about that? I struggle, I sit here, I've done this 35 years now professionally in the world of political journalism in some form or another, on a startup, all these things. And for more than half of it, I was like, yeah, I've got to understand how this game is played. And I viewed it as a game. And I almost wonder, did we all over gamify it, which allowed the ultimate dungeon master himself to outgame everybody? It is like we forgot the goal of the game. It wasn't just to win. It was actually to move the country forward, not just move a political movement forward. And I've been self-analyzing, how much have I, in that sense, how much have I contributed negatively to that mindset?
Football season is upon us, and this season we've teamed up with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we have special offers for our listeners every single week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code SHANE, that's Shaney, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Just make sure you use bonus code Shane when you sign up. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code Shane and get up to $1,500 first bet offer today. In the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And if we blind ourselves willingly, which I think we do a lot of the time, especially when it comes to politics, when we talked earlier, it's about sports. I mean, sports and politics, man, you get your team when you're a kid, and you will not, that doesn't change, and you're not going to hear anything bad against them. Which I want to go to a more macro, you probably more than anybody, so we're talking about this as a game, but you'll get this in that I came from Canada, was very politically active, studied the political spectrum, and I remember always being like, the first thing that happened was I came down, and so Clinton was in, and he had just taken the world's largest deficit and turned it into the world's largest surplus. He had shrunk government, shrinking the military, decreasing taxes. Bush gets in, increases, takes the largest surplus, makes it the largest deficit, bigger government, blah, 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 blah. It literally, the platform switched. No one in America said boo, A. B, how much of this, because it's a two-party system, which means everybody's always in power. The money pays both sides almost equally, right? We're always, sort of, how much of this is bread and puppet theater to say, hey, there's this democracy that we got, and oh my God, it's so important that we vote for this and we vote for that, and it's democracy, when it's just the same two parties in power all the time. Is it not just a big military and a lot of rich people doing what they think is best and political theater to make us believe that we're happy? Or not happy, but part of a democracy.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack there, and yet at the core, I understand that cynicism, and it certainly, I will tell you, I think Trump has embraced that view. He's like, I do believe he believes, you know, when I tried to spend some time trying to understand how he learned politics, meaning where it was we all have a coming of age moment, and sort of we're products, whatever environment we sort of learn politics from is the prism with which I didn't realize when I grew up in Miami, Florida in the 70s and 80s that I actually was growing up in tomorrow's America at the time. And I got, you know, I always say I was born in Miami and I graduated high school in Miami. It was a southern city in the 70s. When I started school in 1977, that's before the Marielito boat lift. Yes, we had one round of Cuban immigrants, but it had not transformed the city in a way that it gets transformed within 3 or 4 years. And I grew up at a time, and I watched all of this, and I didn't realize how much this was going to apply. You know, it was incredibly good training for sort of today's America. And because there's some similarities, it's sort of, Miami was having this fight. I mean, we had an English only. In 1980, the county in Miami that encompasses Miami-Dade County at the time, Miami-Dade these days, voted for an English-only referendum. Voted yes. Okay? You wouldn't have that obviously today, but it was part of this back and forth. And so that's how I come about politics and how I've sort of been a weirdly sort of dispassionate about it. Cause my parents canceled each other's vote out and they talked about it. So I heard this in them, you know, my mother was very skeptical of Reagan. My dad was anybody but Carter, and he ended up loving Reagan and became a dyed-in-the-wool Reagan Democrat. And then, but you think about Trump, and Trump is uber transactional, and he thinks all politics is done under the table. And I'm like, been trying to figure out, why does he think that? Well, because New York City did behave this way in the 70s and the 60s. This is how Fred Trump made money in the 50s and 60s. In order to get Roosevelt. Right. In order to get Fred Trump is dead. In order to get the deals, he used government to get rich, right? Getting these tax breaks to build middle-class housing. And so I think Trump has always viewed government as sort of part of the manipulative process to get yourself rich. So in some ways, he's behaving exactly how he learned politics as a 19-year-old, starting to follow his father around in these development projects. So he really has taken your vision of what you just described, which I find 100% correct. I think it is correct where certainly, and I do believe it's how Trump views it all, that it's all performance, ultimately transactional. If he would have hijacked the Democratic Party, if it were hijackable in 2015, he just chose to hijack the Republican Party because it was a bit easier.
I also say that, and then have a caveat, which is, it seems to me bread and puppet theater, just so we believe we're in a democracy as things just happen. That said, when someone like Trump gets in, they can affect a lot of stuff. You know, the American government, I forget who said this, you'll know better than me, but the American government is set up to do nothing and do it very slowly. And, you know, but Trump has been I'm just going to sign things, and if the Supreme Court, so if you really, it's sort of like, you know, no one's doing anything, but if I get in, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And he's actually doing more. Now, it could be good, it could be bad, it could be legal, it could be illegal, it could be for his friends, it could be for any number of reasons. But by God, are they doing stuff? And generally, I would have said that doesn't really happen.
Right.
So he is doing a lot of crazy stuff that does have effect on things. But by and large, American politics, to me anyway, seems to be a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing.
Well, I think that certainly, go back to 2012. Romney v. Obama is that description, right? Yeah. And it turns out that if we were to have a war tomorrow, an actual civil war in this country, Romney and Obama would be on the same side.
Yes.
And think about the fact that in 2012, they were technically political opponents arguing for two different movements. But in some ways, so I'm not saying that it was all an act. It wasn't an act. But they both, and this gets at to, Trump doesn't look, one of the things that really frustrates me about Trump is that he doesn't believe in the American story. He doesn't believe that America is an idea. He just simply kind of believes, we're the biggest fish and we ought to throw our weight around more. And, that's his behavior right now with Venezuela. That's his behavior in these trade deals. That's his behavior in some ways with the big cities, right? Hey, you need to clean up your act. And if you won't do it, I'll send in mine, but do something.
Right.
And it is, in that sense, I don't think he's ever read a Federalist paper, for instance. I don't think he's ever cared about why the country was founded the way it was founded, why they chose 3 branches of government, why we created these layers. He doesn't care. Now, I do think he has created a roadmap for the presidency that you will see others emulate. Because from a day-to-day perspective, he really has owned everything, right? Owned the narrative. Just look at what you and I are discussing right now. He's got a potential war with Venezuela, essentially a coup. He's going to overthrow. Looks like he wants to overthrow Maduro. Is he going to do it? Has he at all informed Congress, right? He wrote a quick letter. There's no political debate that's going to happen, right? Any other president look what George W. Bush did with the Iraq War. We could criticize the ultimate exercise in it, but he went to the United Nations first. He went to the U.S. Congress first. Trump has done none of that with that. He's talking about the Chicago apocalypse, right? Going and infiltrating Chicago and trying to take control of that situation. He does everything that he wants in any moment in time. And it really has, just from a political gamesmanship, keeps his opponents on their heels because they don't know what to focus on. Now, I don't think he does it as a strategy. I just think he does it because he's got a short attention span. Okay, everybody wants to say, it's just, I think people around him have figured out how to operationalize it.
Sure.
Right. And that is the key difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2.
You mentioned Reagan and your dad. Reagan, before Trump, it was sort of there's none more Reagan than me, kind of the Republican Party, before Trump sort of decided that he wasn't allowed. He sort of Trotskyized them. But Reagan, his strength was, or at least the people around him's strength, was creating a great cabinet of people who could actually get stuff done, and smart people, et cetera. What do you make of Trump's cabinet?
Well, I think we first of all should have a little bit more revisionist history in Trump 1.0. I mean, I look back now, and I do think that the voter that put Trump over the top, not the base of MAGA, but the voter that said, I don't like how Biden's handled this. It's a mess. You know what? Trump wasn't great, but it wasn't a disaster. I don't think they voted for what they're getting. I think they're voting for, when Jim Mattis was defense secretary, when Mike Pompeo was Secretary of State, right? When, in some ways it turned out there was stability. Bill Barr at the Justice Department, he may have been a partisan, but he was independent, right? We found out there's a slight difference between independent partisan and just total sycophant, right? And I think some people, and this is why I think the left may have over cranked themselves in the first term, because now, using the Spinal Tap joke, well, you already went to 11. Are you going to go to 12?
If you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the
and
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Now we actually do have this emergency. I think there's only 2 responsible actors in this cabinet, and I might throw in a third. I think it's the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. I think it's Marco Rubio. And I think Doug Burgum wants to do the right thing. I think he's a little starstruck with Trump sometimes. But after that, Linda McMahon, what are we doing? Pam Bondi has been totally, I think, wrecked the reputation of the Justice Department because it's made it too close, too politicized. And obviously Kennedy is just a mess.
Well, I want to get into that. But before that, when Obama was elected, I remember sitting around with lots of policy wonks and very smart people who were saying this could be like the last we saw just the last Republican. So they're going to be, because of the demographics, because everyone was young, they theoretically only vote Democratic. Obama was, Congress, Senate, and it was him, and oh my God, and everyone's going to be a Democrat from now on. Sort of eviscerated in the last election. What did the Democratic Party do wrong, which is a long list, but also, why do you think they're having such a hard time building their bench?
So I'd go with, the infamous book by my friend Jake Tapper called Original Sin. I love using the expression because the original sin to me does not start with Joe Biden. I look at the original sin as the incorrect analysis of why Obama won in 2012. And what's funny about the post-2012 election analysis is that you sort of create this conventional wisdom got created, and I participated in it too, right? You looked at the numbers and you said, oh, wow, look at this coalition Obama's put together of Latinos. They're starting to vote in numbers that look closer to the way African Americans vote for Democrats. Boy, is that lethal. You put those two things together with millennials at the time, right? Voters under 35, and you have an unbeatable coalition. And in fact, so convinced were Democrats that this identity politics was the answer, that even the Republicans agreed. If you go back and read the autopsy, they're like, hey, we got a problem here. This Hispanic population is growing. They're voting more. We've got to be able to talk to Latinos better. They even the autopsy came to the conclusion that it was identity politics is the answer going forward. And this is going to be, and the Republicans better get their share of it. When it turned out, Obama didn't win on identity. Obama made Mitt Romney the guy you didn't like who fired your brother. Okay. He was the corporate stooge that, came in and brought in the consulting groups to clear out the factory that had supported your town. Right. And they made this concerted effort in the Midwestern swing states, which also included Iowa and Ohio at the time, 2 states Obama carried. All they did was advertise about all the ways he outsourced jobs to China. They made a class argument, Shane, an old-fashioned class warfare argument. Okay, they're getting at you. And so, he didn't run on guns, and he didn't run on cultural issues that might scare away some of these working class voters in Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, right? He went at their livelihood. He's not one of you. He doesn't like you. And I think the Democrats, messaging wise, got trapped for a decade into believing identity politics was the answer to sustained success. They recruited candidates that way. They recruited staffers that way. Everything got that stacked that way. And then I would make one more. You talked about the bench issue. Barack Obama became president because half the Democratic Party said, hey, we're done with the Clintons. And what did Barack Obama do in 2015? He anointed Hillary Clinton.
Look, I know how hard this job can be. That's why I know Hillary will be so good at it.
Now, I understand his rationale. His rationale was, hey, the Clintons had my back in 2012. They did. Bill Clinton was the best economic surrogate he could have found. So in the old-fashioned party politics, Shane, yeah, Obama owed him. Okay, you want this? I'll come out for you. I'll keep Biden out of this race. But how badly did the Democratic Party not want Hillary Clinton as their nominee? This gadfly nobody had ever heard of in national politics, from Vermont, jumps in the race and suddenly becomes a co-equal favorite.
For
right?
sure, yeah.
And who would have run if Hillary doesn't run in 2016? Michael Bennett runs. Amy Klobuchar runs. Cory Booker. That entire crew, essentially, other than maybe Beto and Pete, from 2020, all run in 2016. And you have the generational turnover. And I look at it as, God damn it, my generation would have had a shot at the presidency, Gen X, and we're done. We're screwed. Gen X is never getting the presidency because the boomers held on. I mean, the fact that the president we elected in 92 and the president we elected in 24 were born 1 month apart, Gen X is screwed, man. Anyway.
Well, I'm Gen X, and that just bums me out because I think we're the best generation. So we would be the philosopher kings.
And you know why? We're the smallest one. And I do think, my wife and I discuss this all the time, we've been too accommodating as a generation, which gives us both our strength, but it's also why we didn't kick the boomers out of leadership soon enough. We should have.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've stepped out of the, go ahead, millennials. Yeah. We blew it. It's your turn. And we're out.
Hello, Bango, and welcome to our BetMGM lightning round. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code Shane and get up to $1,500 first bet offer today. Using your sage advice, we're sponsored by BetMGM, and I always do a lightning round of stuff. But I want to do a lightning round.
I may or may not gamble, probably too much. That's all right.
I may or may not gamble, probably too much. But you know what? We're Gen X. We're allowed, so everyone can go to hell.
That's right.
Odds-on favorite. Which state is the kingmaker in 2020? Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona. Or pick another one.
I think North Carolina and Georgia as a pair, especially going into 2032, but I believe it's about 2028, just because of the declining vote share of what we're seeing in the Midwestern states. I think Georgia, North Carolina, what Florida and Ohio were the first decade of this century, what Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania have been for the second decade, I have a feeling I'm betting on Georgia, North Carolina.
You heard it here first. I love it. Which institution is less trusted right now, Congress or the press, and if so, by how many points?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think Congress is more distrusted. As John McCain used to say, it's just friends and family giving an approval rating at this point, but it's close.
It's close. Who has a deeper bench for 2032, Democrats or Republicans?
For 2032 or 2028?
Well, I have 2032 here, but 2028. Go 2028.
Oh, 2032?
Hey, both. Let's go.
Well, here's the thing. In theory, it's the Democrats, but what I don't know is the Republican Party a family affair? Do more Trumps run? And then I could say, does the bench matter? There is no bench then if it's just Trumps.
The last one here is a third-party candidate actually carries, we won't give them the country, but a state.
Boy, I pine for this. Meaning, I do think the two parties really benefited from Ross Perot's disruption. Bill Clinton doesn't balance the budget without Ross Perot.
Right.
The Republicans don't become the party of skeptical on trade without Ross Perot. So I think we've never been more, I think not since Perot 92 or Teddy Roosevelt or George Wallace 68. Pardon me. I think the conditions are there for this.
Yeah.
But boy, it's really, the barrier to entry is both lower than ever because of the internet. Perot did it without the internet and got on all 50 state ballots, which in hindsight's unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Now you've got organizing is a lot easier. I think the odds are 10% that we get a strong enough third-party candidate that they carry a state. And that's actually fairly high. Most historians would, because by the way, we haven't had a third-party carry a state in over 100 years.
Yeah. I was explaining to someone the other day that when I graduated university, I remember I gave a speech, and I said, look, I've already lived in the nicest house I'm ever going to live in. I've driven the nicest car. Because at that time, it was like the boomers had everything. And meaning the best house I'm ever going to live in is my parents', And because the economic bill was being given to us for all the environmental degradation, et cetera, inequality. Now this is in Canada. And then I was explaining to my daughters the Carl Sagan thing of we live in billions and billions of worlds and billions of years, this tiny little wink of perfect, air temperature, water, this perfect time for humans to live. And Gen X in that tiny little window had the birth of international travel, the birth of luxury, the birth of food becoming a thing that's wasn't just sort of ham and eggs with coffee, and all of a sudden we've had this great art and economic freedom, and by the way the economy didn't collapse, and we've just ignored the environment. So Gen X has actually been the sort of greatest and happiest generation ever, but we've been foreshadowed, and now whatever that's called, pre-shadowed or whatever.
Yeah.
But we would make the best, I think, generation to sort of lead people calmly and dispassionately towards our eventual doom.
How does it feel to you? I'm going to throw something at you. How does it feel to you that our demographic, basically Gen X white guys, are Donald Trump's strongest demographic?
You know, I think we got fed up with being just like, there's my favorite movie's called With Nell and I, and Uncle Monty is like, on by Labour, shoveled up by the Tories. And you sort of sit there going, you know, you go, it's the Nixonian silent majority. You know, you're sitting there and you're a tax paying machine. All you do is pay taxes and you work. You're kind of a donkey, you know, the thing. And you're just getting on and shoveled up. And
we're the first generation without pensions.
There you go. And a first generation without a lot of stuff. But look, and also people have woken up to the fact, like, look, there's, you know, you guys had it easy for a long time. I love history, right? But sort of looking back at history and saying we're going to make our policy based on what happened 200 years ago. It's like, okay, well, let's do that for medicine. Let's do that for... But I would say Gen X got the short end of the stick, but we also kind of got a get out of jail free card. Because we grew up kind of like feral children. Like, you know, we grew up when you could do whatever you want, run in the forest and play in the creek. And, you know, and that doesn't happen anymore. And we could blame the boomers for everything, which I do. And, you know, boomers are shit. And now millennials are just idiots. So the only real sane ones are the Gen X's, you know. And so it's kind of a blessing in disguise. But right now, I don't know. I think it's the purview of old people when they leave. They either go, well, we're leaving a real fucked up place, or, my God, isn't this going to be an exciting time for you to live in with AI and with, you know, quantum and with all these things. I have sort of shifted from being a cynicist to, I think that this next generation, my kids, are really going to have like a wild time of it, man.
I say something similar. I say I'm long-term optimistic, short-term pessimistic. I think the next, you know, couple of presidential cycles are going to suck. And we've gone through this. I mean, we had 7 presidents in 28 years between Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln. You know, I think we've had 3 one-termers in a row. We probably might go 4 or 5, you know, but the blink of an eye, if 2050 is when we get out of this.
Who's next?
Well, the question is, I think less who's next, what's next. Is what's next a continuation of Trump or a reaction to Trump?
Yeah.
And then from there, you figure out who the candidate's going to be. I'm somebody who believes, you look at the history of presidents, at least in the television era, we usually go for the opposite of whatever has exhausted us from the current president.
AOC.
You know, and that would be, well, yes, except would we want that activist of a president?
Right.
You know, I could make the argument.
I'm just saying that's the opposite. I used to say, like, if AOC, you know, starts to get, then that's a civil war in America. And ironically, you know, it's all about name recognition. We're talking about building the bench. Her name recognition is up there. You know, she's at least doing stuff and saying stuff, and she's young and she's saying stuff. And I would have said, you're crazy. But AOC is like, a lot of people are getting on that bandwagon. And if you want the anti-Trump party, that party is going to be AOC led.
You know, I do ground myself in this. At this point in time, so this would have been, say, 1989, before Bill Clinton in 1992, nobody was saying Bill Clinton was going to be next. Nobody had Clinton. It was still pining for Mario Cuomo. In 1973, nobody was talking about Jimmy Carter for president, right? So, and Pete Buttigieg at this point in time, before 2020, was the guy who failed to win the chairmanship of the DNC. And we were like, who is this mayor of South Bend, and why is he so interested in trying to get into national politics, right? So I do think that the name of the next great Democratic hope, we don't know the name. You tell me it's Talarico, right? Yeah. You tell me it's this kid in Texas, it wouldn't shock me. You tell me it's this woman, Molly McMorrow, who's a state rep running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. You tell me maybe it's her. Point is that I think that the rank and file's looking for new. They don't get new. Maybe then it is AOC, but I think they're looking for something new and fresh.
Yeah, I agree with you. We didn't see Obama coming till he was 0 to 60 with a bullet. All right. Well, I have not gotten to one question that I have prepared because you've been so scintillating. Here we go. We're in a place in America where trust in institutions is at rock bottom. I interviewed Obama as he was leaving, and his biggest fear was Americans losing their faith in democratic institutions that have weathered
10
the
years
storm.
ago.
Exactly. But it's also trust in press is at a rock bottom. So you've got like trust in institutions at a rock bottom. You've got trust in press at a rock bottom. What the hell happens?
Well, I think I look at the problem in the press. I think is, I have a cheap applause line that says, a man named Craig decided classifieds ought to be free, yada, yada, yada. Donald Trump became president. And what I'm referring to is obviously Craig's List and the destruction of local news. And what I've come to, I spent the last 2 years, Shane, after I left Meet the Press, I went to any journalism school that would have me, do sort of a meet and greet, trying to, see, first of all, try to share the message. Hey, we still want people in journalism. Don't give up on this. I mean, in fact, my pitch is, whenever, it's a terrible time to be in your 50s in journalism. It's a great time to be in your 20s in journalism. When you're involved in a disruptive time, that's how I got my first job. So I am very bullish on it. But I think what happened when we knocked out local, right? Craig's List inadvertently, and I've talked to Craig Newmark. I've gotten to know him a little bit. So he's self-aware, and if he didn't do it, somebody else would have. But it turned out classified advertising, probably for any newspaper with a circulation of under 50,000, was probably a majority of the revenue. It really sort of kept the doors open. And when you got rid of that, the revenue streams for so many papers just crumbled. And I think what it turned out was there's two types of journalism, right? To me, local journalism is service journalism. What do I mean by that? It's just helping you live your life. It's telling you where the cheaper food is. It's telling you what's happening in your neighborhood. It's telling you, how to navigate life, your local life. National journalism is your civics journalism. It's telling you what's happening in the world, how you should, and I don't think national media ever had trust of the people. What we did have was local outlets that were our character references. And when people trusted their local news, then they would give us the benefit of the doubt. But when local disappeared, there wasn't that personal connection. Well, I know my kid goes to school with that reporter's kid. I know they're not some crazy woke person, or they're not some crazy right-wing nut. These people are, I saw them at the baseball field, or I saw them at the soccer field, right? Like it's part of the community. When we lost our community sort of representatives, that's where I think the entire thing crumbled. It turned out like any house, right? If you're a 2-story building or more, there's always a pole that, or a stud that matters more, that keeps the house up, right? And it turned out local was keeping up the entire institution of journalism. So I do that as a long story short of going, I think we have to rebuild our local outlets first before we ever get credibility back on the national level. And we have to reimagine and rethink what local information looks like. I don't even like using the word news these days. I call it sort of, your local information. I think I'm a believer in leaning in hard on sports as a community glue. Then you sort of build trust from there. But I think that is the number one. I look at it as that's what I'm going to work on. Our democracy has the same problem, right? Our Congress is too small. We were supposed to expand Congress with our population, and we stopped doing it in 1930. Congress should be twice the size. And, so I would argue our politicians and the press have the same problem. We're too distant from the people we are reporting on or / representing. Now, I'm not a political guy. I'm on the press side, so I'm going to work on the press side. But I do think our democracy needs we need a remodeling of the democracy. We need, it needs to be updated. And one of the updates means we need a bigger Congress. And we need one fast, and we may need a constitutional convention. It's okay to update. If our founders came back today, they'd be like, 1, you have the same constitution? Holy shit, I didn't see that coming. And 2, there's only 28 amendments? What the hell are you guys doing?
Very well thought out answer, because my first reaction when I hear that trust in news is at an all-time low and trust in our democratic institutions is at an all-time low, it means our democracy, that we started off the thing saying our quasi-democracy, our proto-democracy is really at risk. And when you have China saying, by the way, we're stable, we're the same, answer every time you come back to us, and America is just all over the map, and you guys, we don't know who you are. I mean, Xi just famously gave a speech recently where he's usually very short and very, okay, thank you, and he gets out, and he had this long speech about how he had a walk with Obama, and they walked around the gardens, and it was this walk, and how the sun was coming down, and he goes, yeah, Obama's giving speeches now and Trump's president. It was like the whole thing was a Rodney Dangerfield dig at democracy, and a lot of the people are like, yeah, I mean, so I think we're at this, I agree with you 100%, we're at this sort of turning point, crux, important point, whatever you want to call it, for both journalism / news and democracy as we know it. And I think unless you sort of sit there, and this is why I got back in the game podcast, or maybe why you're doing your podcast, unless you start saying, well, I'm at least going to try, then we're in deep
shit. When you read Democracy in America, de Tocqueville, and it's amazing sometimes the people that are the most in awe of America are usually those that are not here. They're the ones that see us from the outside. One of the things that de Tocqueville thought was our strength was our local town councils, the town meetings. And this was much more of an East Coast, New England thing. It is not as prevalent as you go further west, which is a shame. Although direct democracy is a little more prevalent the further west you go with referendum, right?
Yeah.
And the East Coast, it is sort of small town communities and stuff. But it goes back to the point of local. We've lost, the minute we nationalized everything is when we lost our identity, right? What made us different was the fact we had this sort of locally sourced democracy and a locally sourced media. And then what happened, like anything, right? We scaled it, right? We scaled it for efficiencies, and if we were a product, that makes sense. But it turns out for politics and for news that didn't, because that isn't what the people want. The people want, the one thing social media has revealed to me is we're all a little bit narcissistic, and we love what's going on around us, which means we want more local news. Why do we know this? Because we think everything happening around us is worthy of coverage. So we ought to, we ought to lean into that human condition rather than lean out of it.
Well, speaking of that, and the sort of ongoing gerrymandering of America, you recently warned that the intensifying redistricting battles in Texas and California are fueling a quote-unquote cold civil war, and it's no longer sort of ordinary partisan skirmishes, but a constitutional stress test. And I'm going to be, I just want to add a little anecdote, because when people were talking about Obama being the sort of last Democratic, there would be no more Republicans, president. I went to go interview Frank Luntz, who had sort of was getting all the Republicans together to sort of figure out what to do. And one of the things that they did incredibly successfully, if you look at the last electoral map, was they gerrymandered the shit out of the counties. They went out and just went, and so if you look at it, the majority of the counties are red, and then the majority of cities are blue, because the Democrats have gerrymandered that. So now we have this sort of Texas v. California gerrymandering war, which leads to sort of ne'er the twain shall meet. This cold civil war. Like, how does this end?
I don't know. I mean, we actually took it a step further, right? So you look at what Kennedy did with the CDC and the FDA. So what is California doing? They're forming a consortium with Oregon and Washington, right? You're going to have, I think Massachusetts I said they are going to do that. I mean, are we going to have two different state, are we going to start having two different constitutions, right? Like, that's how it began, right? And here we go. So I do struggle with the idea. I understand tactically and sort of in the rules of games, sort of game theory, why the Democrats are doing what they're doing. But Shane, why is the answer to disenfranchising voters in Texas going to California and disenfranchising voters?
Look, what I was getting at is, I agree with you. News is local, and you're interested and captivated by what you know, what's around you, and that used to be, the village, and your village would fight the other village, and then that became the city state, and that became the nation state, and we used to talk about supranational entities. When you can guarantee security, for example, then sure, Basque should be its own, country, or, these little countries, because it's more democratic, right? And so if you actually want to look at democracy, then you can say, okay, if we guarantee our economy, we guarantee safety, why wouldn't, there's a lot of people out here in California like, we're the 4th largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. Why are we dealing with all this crap? And so you see this sort of, narcissistic fragmentation going on in the psyche, if you will.
Well, and you saw it in Texas when Obama was president, right? You had that mindset was sort of creeping into Texans and that thesis as well. No, this is where, look, I go back and I, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? I do think the algorithms have sort of helped self-sort us a little bit. And this is something, the idea that big tech is like our innocent bystanders here, right? And they're sort of, hey, we can't help what people read. And you're like, but you can, and you did, and here we are.
We're going to look back at this time and go, what were we thinking? It's crazy.
Right. No, it is. And look, I love social media until I hated it, right? It was a force for good until it became a force for bad, right? We all saw the idealistic aspects of it. I mean, do you remember the 10 minutes during the Arab Spring when we thought, wow, we're going to bring democracy to the entire planet? Thank you, social media, right? And Jack Dorsey was just swimming in that, right? And you're like, well, maybe not. Maybe China's going to figure out how to build their own firewall, and here we are, right? So I don't know how this ends. I will say this. Unfortunately, here's another historical thought bubble I've had, a thesis. Let me throw it at you and tell me what you think. That the Cold War gave both parties a North Star not to screw around with, and it kept the fringes at bay. So you never had the super progressives nor the super nationalists, fascists, whatever you want to refer to them then, on the right. So if you want to refer, we can go fascists and socialists, all right, to make all the haters happy, okay? They were sort of always kept on the outside because you had a North Star. Both parties said, hey, they both thought you got to challenge the Soviet Union. There was disagreement on how to do it, but there wasn't disagreement on whether to do it. And if you think about it, the Cold War, the wall falls in 1989. Pat Buchanan challenges George H.W. Bush from the right, which is basically Trump, the beta test of Trump. And I look back at our politics today, and it looks a lot like our politics pre-World War II. And I do ask myself, is it possible we grew up in an outlier period of American history and that the normal state of America is full polarization? Because we've had 6 of 7 presidential elections this century decided by 5 points or less. We only had 5 presidential elections in the entire 20th century decided by 5 points or less. Meanwhile, we had, I think, 11 presidential elections in the 19th century decided by 5 points or less. So there's a part of me that wonders if actually this is our natural state and we warped our brains because our coming of age was during, frankly, the high point of American democratic supremacy for the globe.
Civil War never ended. There should be 2 countries, and the only reason why we were sane was because of mutually assured destruction.
Yeah,
we were kept in line because of our
we had something. You said, why would nobody want to secede back then? It was a scary world.
Yeah, I mean, when people talk about Cal exit, I come from Canada, and Quebec wanted to separate, and everybody, oh my God, Quebec, and you're like, why? What is this inviolate? Like, talk about the Gulf War, the sovereignty of Kuwait. Kuwait was drawn in a line. We made it, and we're defending it for ourselves.
We've never ended World War I, Shane. I sit here, it's one of my pet peeves, like in the entire debate about Israel and the Palestinians and all this stuff. What really chaps me is like, this is still the fault of the British and the French, who never resolved the fall of the Ottoman Empire.
There you go. Exactly. And look, we drew those lines and then decided that we would defend them because that was anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent because I could talk to you forever. I want to talk about journalism because you've been such a great champion and a great face for all of us out there. How does it save itself? Because it's in a really difficult position. Nobody trusts it. Nobody trusts anybody. Talk about narcissism, not wanting to talk to anybody from the other side. I mean, when I started this thing, I'm like, okay, let's look at social media and talk to either side and try to figure out where the truth lies, and then you get hammered for talking to this guy and hammered for talking to that guy. Look, at some point we have to talk to each other, and it's just politics. Like, it's like if you vote for someone, we have to move, or we can't ever see them again, or we can never invite them for, like, this civil war that's going on, or this cold civil war that's going on. How does that stop, and how do we get news or commonality of facts that people actually believe in?
Well, that's why I'm obsessed with trying to rebuild it bottom up and try to. So I have this thesis that says, the one thing that parents care about is their kids. And it doesn't matter if you wear the red jersey or the blue jersey. And we're obsessed with youth sports in this country. And youth sports is a path to paying for college more and more now than it was even 10 years ago, with the crazy money that's being poured into all sorts of sports. It's not just football and basketball, the big revenue sports.
And swimming.
Yeah, I got a friend whose kid's getting NIL money for beach volleyball. Yeah. At a Division I university. I mean, it's a serious, and hey, it's helping him pay for his kids' school. So what does this mean? And the rise of Caitlin Clark. Well, first of all, we're going to have gender equity now in youth sports. We've not had that. So there's going to be this influx, even though our population of youth is actually stagnant as a country. We're actually going to see this massive growth in youth sports because of, wow, I can play professional this, or I can pay for college doing this. And you might be able to make a few bucks in college doing this. It is, so if we spend a lot of time going back and just helping cover those games, and you're the home of people streaming that stuff, and you help parents sort of navigate that world. Well, the minute you're helping them raise their kids, that's how you build trust. Then you start expanding out. You help them save money. The old newspapers give you coupons. Well, the new local news may have an influencer who tells you, hey, they've got cheaper chicken this week at Aldi's instead of at Trader Joe's. You want to go out to dinner, you can get a buy one, get your kids eat free at this restaurant. Whatever it is, you have but you rethink, you center an information organization, don't use the word news, around the lives that basically everybody's living to help them. You may even engage the parents to help you cover these youth sports. AI can help you to a certain extent. And then eventually, when you tell them their city councilman's corrupt because they've been taking side money, and this is why they don't have affordable housing, but they have, this giant data center sucking up power and raising your power bill. Well, hey, these are the same people that's where I watch my kids' games, so I trust them. The point is that I think you've got to meet, if we're going to rebuild trust, you got to meet people where they are, help them. And if you're telling the truth about what they know about their kids' lives, then over time they'll build. But this isn't going to this doesn't work because, hey, I've hired Barry Weiss over here and Rachel Maddow over here. Mm-hmm. Like, that isn't how we're solving this problem. Mm-hmm. I want all of those voices out there. I think they're counterbalances, and you need these things. And I'm all for it. My father was a news junkie. He was conservative, but we got National Review and New Republic because he said, I want to understand the liberal arguments. Look, that's just not a world that a lot of people are raised in these days, and that's fine. But I think the only way this gets rebuilt is local. It's not lost on me, Shane, that when you ask people what news do they trust the most, what do they usually pick?
Local news.
Right, because every day you get to fact check local news.
Yeah. You can see if it's raining.
Exactly.
And
you're like, oh, these guys know what they're doing or they don't know what they're doing.
I love that answer. Grassroots journalism.
It's not sexy. That's the
I
problem.
like
it's
it.
not a.
I like it because I tell people a lot. They're, oh my God, Walter Cronkite and the golden era of news. And you're like, you realize there was a guy in a hotel, probably an Intercontinental, and he didn't leave his hotel. He was drinking whiskey. He made $38,000 a year. He had some stringers go out there, and the stringers would say, this is what's happening. He would just type it up. They would send that in, and a producer would write up, and they put in a teleprompter, and Walter Cronkite would read it. That was the news.
I know.
And whatever that stringer decided to write, and whatever those guys would say, they might not even gone to the place. That was the golden era of news. Anyways, I love that answer. I love talking to you. I want to keep these lines of communication open because I want to see how your podcast and new burgeoning empire goes. Good luck. I'm going to be tuning in every Sunday, and thank you very much for all the work you've put in over the years.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you. This was fun.
We appreciate your work.
Thank you, Shane.
Hi, it's Shane Smith. I wanted to let you know about my new Substack. I'm shanesmith.substack.com. Now, I'm going to be posting a lot of new content there, from extended versions of this show to behind-the-scenes stories from my adventures all over the world with Vice. Now, the best part, it's free if you sign up now. So go to shanesmith.substack.com and enter your email. That's it, shanesmith.substack.com. Or click the link below, which rhymes with Bazango.